People say monsters hide under your bed, or in your closet, or in the dark corners of your house. Mine didn't. Mine stood across the street every evening at 5 o'clock, perfectly still, perfectly quiet, just watching. The first time I saw her, I didn't think anything of it. It was one of those ordinary days that you never expect to remember later. Gray sky, light drizzle, the kind of soft, damp air that makes everything feel heavier than it really is. I had just gotten home from work, my shoulders aching from another long shift, my brain buzzing with numbers, customers, and the loud hum of the fluorescent lights at the store. I dropped my bag by the front door, kicked off my shoes, and walked toward the window just to pull the curtains closed. That's when I saw her, across the street, standing on the sidewalk directly in front of our house. She wasn't doing anything, not talking on the phone, not scrolling, not pretending to be busy. She was just there, still, staring at my house, at my window, at me. She looked to be in her late 40s, maybe early 50s. It's hard to tell with people who carry too much sadness in their faces. It makes them look older and younger at the same time. Her dark hair was tied loosely at the back, a few strands falling around her cheeks. She wore a long, faded coat that looked too thin for the weather. In her hands, she clutched a small bag. Not a purse, not a backpack, just a little cloth bag like the kind you'd take to the market. She didn't move when our eyes met. She didn't look embarrassed or startled or guilty. She looked surprised, like she had been watching me for a long time and never expected me to finally see her. Our eyes locked for maybe 2 seconds, 3 at most, but it felt like much, much longer. Then I did what most people do when something strange makes them uncomfortable. I broke eye contact. I pulled the curtains closed. I told myself it was nothing. When I finally mentioned her to Mom, it was just in passing. We were sitting in the living room later that night, the TV on low, some drama playing that neither of us was really watching. "Hey, there was a woman standing across the street earlier. Kind of weird, just staring this way." Mom's shoulders instantly tensed. It was fast, barely noticeable, but I saw it. She didn't look at me right away, just kept her eyes on the TV, smiling in that tight way she always did when she was trying to look relaxed. "A woman?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Dark hair, long coat, just standing there." "Probably waiting for someone," Mom said quickly. "People do that." I nodded, but something about the way she said it felt off. Too quick, too rehearsed, like an answer she'd been keeping ready for a situation she hoped would never come. The next day, I forgot about the woman. Life has a way of pushing weird moments to the back of your mind when you're busy. Work, messages, bills, laundry, social media, the constant scrolling and tapping, it all piles up and drowns out the things you should have paid attention to. I woke up late, rushed through my morning routine, grabbed a stale muffin for breakfast, and sprinted to the bus stop just in time. By the time I got home again, I was exhausted. I dropped my things, walked to the window again, and opened the curtains to let some air in. She was there. Same spot, same time, same coat. This time, she wasn't looking at her feet or at the sky. She was looking straight at my window, straight at me. I froze. The world outside felt distant, muted. I heard a car passing, a dog barking somewhere, the faint sound of a neighbor's TV through the wall, but it all felt far away. All I could focus on were her eyes. They weren't angry. They weren't wild or threatening. They were sad. Not just regular sad. The kind of sadness that looks like it has lived in someone for years. Her expression wasn't blank either. It was searching, like she was trying to read something on my face from a distance, like she was looking for an answer to a question I didn't know had been asked. I lifted my hand and gave a small, awkward wave. Something flickered across her face. Shock, pain, something sharp and quick. Then she turned, walked away. Not fast, not running, just left, without looking back. That night, I didn't tell Mom. I don't know why. Maybe because I didn't want her to give me another too quick answer. Maybe because part of me didn't want to admit that I was starting to feel unsettled. Or maybe because some tiny, quiet part of me recognized something in that woman's eyes that I didn't have words for yet. A kind of familiar emptiness, a kind of loneliness that felt too close to my own. When you're adopted, you learn how to ignore certain feelings. Like when people joke about real parents and you pretend it doesn't sting. Or when you fill out forms and skip the parts about medical history because you don't know which boxes to check. Or when you stand in front of the mirror and realize there's no one you can look at to say, oh, I got my nose from her, or my eyes are just like his. You just exist between stories, between roots. You tell yourself you're fine. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. Most days, you almost believe it. But some nights, like this one, I lay awake thinking about a stranger across the street and wondering, why did she look at me like I was important? By the third day, it stopped feeling like coincidence. I got home early, earlier than usual. I wanted to see if she'd be there. Part of me hoped she wouldn't, that it really had been random, that if I opened the curtains at 4:45, the sidewalk would be empty, and I could laugh at myself for being dramatic. But when I stood by the window and slowly pulled back the curtain, the sidewalk was already occupied. She was there, standing in the same spot, facing our house. She wasn't looking up this time. She was looking down at something in her hands, a folded piece of paper, maybe a photograph. I couldn't see clearly. I watched her for a minute. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, closed her eyes for a second, took a deep breath like someone about to jump into cold water. Then, as if sensing my eyes on her, she looked up. Our eyes met again, and this time she didn't look away. There was something in her gaze that I couldn't describe at first. Not anger, not accusation, recognition. Like you look at someone you've seen in dreams over and over again. My stomach knotted. Before I could look away, she did something new. She lifted her hand and waved. Not a cheerful wave, not a neighborly one, a hesitant, trembling wave, like every muscle in her arm was fighting her. My chest tightened. I didn't wave back. I just stood there, place frozen in front of the glass, unsure of what any of this meant. She held the wave for just a moment longer, then lowered her hand. She looked down at whatever she was holding, pressed it to her chest, and walked away. Again, same path, same pace, like she had rehearsed it, like this was a ritual. That night at dinner, I finally said it. There's a woman watching our house. Mom dropped her fork. It clattered loudly against the plate and bounced onto the table. Her face went pale. What? She stammered. I swallowed. I've seen her 3 days in a row now. Always around the same time. Always in the same spot. She just stands there, looking this way. Mom's hands were shaking. Probably just Someone from the neighborhood, she said. Maybe she's waiting for a ride. No one waits in the exact same place at the exact same time 3 days in a row, I said quietly. Her jaw tensed. Maybe you're imagining it. I'm not. I avoided saying the next part, the part about how the woman waved at me today, how she looked at me like she knew me. Mom stared at me for a long moment. Then she said something I didn't expect. If you see her again, don't go outside. Just close the curtains. Her tone wasn't casual anymore. It wasn't rushed. It was firm, sharp, afraid. I frowned. Why? Just do it, she said. Our eyes met, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a strange distance between us. Something old, something unspoken, something that had been hiding in this house long before a woman started watching it from across the street. I barely slept that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the glow from my phone screen lighting up the room in small bursts as I scrolled through social media, trying to distract myself. People posted selfies, food pictures, vacation clips, funny memes. Somewhere in the noise, someone shared a quote. Sometimes the past doesn't knock. It just stands outside and waits until you're ready to open the door. I stared at that line for a long time. Then I turned my phone off, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just wondering about my past in a vague, distant way. It felt close now, real, standing across the street at 5 o'clock every day. On the 4th day, I decided not to wait until I got home. I asked my boss if I could leave a little early, made up some excuse about a delivery, and rushed to catch the earlier bus. My heart pounded the whole ride home. I checked the time. 4:42, 4:47, 4:52. When the bus turned onto my street, I felt my stomach twist. From the window, I could see our house. I could see the sidewalk. And I could see her. She wasn't standing this time. She was sitting on the edge of the curb, hands clasped together, elbows resting on her knees. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile, like she had been waiting for a very long time. I got off at the corner before the driver reached my house. My legs felt shaky as I walked the rest of the way on foot. I stayed on my side of the street, heart hammering in my ears. She didn't notice me at first. Her gaze was fixed on the front door of our house, like she was waiting for someone to come out, like she knew the exact person who lived there, like she knew me. I almost turned and went around the block. I almost pretended I didn't see her. I almost chose the safety of pretending nothing strange was happening. But something inside me, that same quiet voice that had pushed me to open the birthday box, to read the hidden letters, to knock on my aunt's door, whispered, "You can't keep running from questions that already know where you live." So I took a breath, kept walking, closer, closer, until I was standing just a few feet away from her. She looked up, and this time, she didn't just look at me. She looked through me. Her lips parted, eyes shining with something between shock and relief. Up close, I could see the details of her face, the faint lines around her mouth, the tired circles under her eyes, the way her hands trembled, just slightly. She knew me. I could see it. But I didn't know her, not at all. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice unsteady. For a moment, she didn't respond. Her gaze searched my face like she was trying to memorize it. Then she whispered a sentence that made every hair on my body stand on end. a sentence that felt like a key turning in a lock I didn't know existed inside me. She said, "I'm sorry. I've been watching you your whole life." And in that moment, standing on the sidewalk outside my own house, I realized this woman wasn't a stranger. She was a door to a past I had been raised never to open, and whether I wanted to or not, I had just stepped through it. For a moment after she said it, "I've been watching you your whole life," I didn't move. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. My body felt like it had been unplugged from reality. Those words didn't feel real. They felt like something from a nightmare, the kind where you can't scream or run because your legs won't work. She looked at me with eyes that trembled, eyes that carried stories I didn't know yet. "I know how that sounded," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But please, please don't be afraid of me." My throat tightened. "I'm not," I stopped, because I was. I was terrified, not because she looked dangerous, but because something in my chest was reacting, a kind of recognition I didn't understand. She took a shaky step back, as if she didn't want to scare me. She said softly, "I never meant for you to notice me. I never wanted you to know." My voice finally escaped, small and thin. "Know what?" She swallowed hard. "That I exist in your story." Her words confused me, and frightened me, and made something deep inside me stir. A car passed behind us, honking at a squirrel, and the sudden noise snapped the world back into motion. I took a step back. "Who are you?" I asked. She opened her mouth to answer, then hesitated, like the truth was stuck behind her teeth. Finally, she whispered, "My name is Helen." I waited, but it felt like that wasn't the answer, not the real one, not the one she came to give. "And how do you know me?" I asked. She looked down at her trembling hands. "I've known you since you were a baby," she said quietly. "I knew you when you couldn't even hold your own head up." Her voice cracked. "I knew you before you could say my name." My stomach dropped. "My name?" I repeated. She nodded slowly. "You used to say it all the time," she said, "before you forgot me." I blinked. A cold wave ran through me. "I don't understand," I whispered. Her eyes softened. "I know," she said, "and I know I have no right to be here, no right to say any of this. But there is something you deserve to know, something I've carried alone for 20 years." The curtain from my living room window moved behind us. I didn't have to look to know Mom was there, watching. The glass reflected her shape, frozen, still, her hand pressed against a window frame. Helen followed my gaze. Her face tightened. "She knows," she whispered. "She's always known." "Known what?" I asked. Helen's breath shuddered. "That I never stopped looking for you." My chest squeezed painfully. "I think you should go," I said quietly. Helen's lip trembled, like I had punched her. "I understand," she whispered. "I've only ever been a shadow in your life. I never meant to step into the light." She looked down at the curb, as if trying to steady her voice. "Just, please let me say one thing before I go." I didn't respond. She lifted her eyes to mine, and the look she gave me, it wasn't the look of a stranger. It wasn't the look of someone with bad intentions. It was the look of someone who had swallowed a lifetime of sorrow and didn't know how to let it out. She exhaled shakily and said, "You look just like her." I froze. "Like who?" I whispered. Helen smiled sadly, the kind of smile that dies halfway. "Your mother." My heart stopped. "My adoptive mother?" I asked carefully. "No," she breathed. "Your first mother." The world tilted. My breath vanished. Helen continued, voice trembling. "You have her eyes, her expressions, even the way you hold your hands. It's exactly the same." I stepped back instinctively. I think you're mistaken. Helen shook her head. No, I'm not mistaken. I knew her. I loved her. I watched her fall apart when she lost you. My throat tightened. What are you talking about? Tears filled Helen's eyes. I'm talking about the day she left you, she whispered, and the day I lost you too. The front door opened behind me. Mom stepped out, her face pale, her eyes sharp with fear. Go inside, she said firmly. Her voice wasn't angry. It was terrified. Helen looked down. Hello, Margaret. Mom froze, like she'd been hit with something invisible. She whispered, You weren't supposed to come back. Helen's jaw tensed. I had to. She deserves the truth. Mom's voice cracked. Not like this. Then when? Helen whispered, her voice breaking. When? I've waited 20 years. I've watched her grow from the sidewalk because you said I couldn't ever. Enough, Mom snapped, her voice shaking. I stood between them, my chest burning. Someone tell me what's going on, I said, barely getting the words out. Neither of them answered. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, overflowing, with secrets and hurt and history I never knew was incomplete. Before I could speak, Helen whispered, There's so much you don't know. About her, about you, about why she left, about why I wasn't allowed to see you again. She bowed her head, her voice breaking. Please, let me tell you the truth. And in that moment, in the fading evening light, between two women who both looked like they were about to fall apart, I realized this was only the beginning. For a long moment after Helen said it, I was your mother's sister, nobody moved. The world felt suspended, like everything around us had been wrapped in thick glass. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would break first. My composure, Mom's silence, or Helen's courage. I stood there, in the middle of the walkway, caught between two women who both looked like they were holding on to the last threads of themselves. Finally, I whispered, You're my aunt? Helen nodded slowly. Mom's jaw clenched. Her eyes glistened with tears she refused to let fall. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. I don't understand, I said quietly. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why hide something like that? Mom inhaled sharply, like she was preparing to step into a storm she had been trying to outrun for years. But Helen spoke first. Because you were never supposed to know, she said softly. Not like this. I swallowed, my voice small. Then how was I supposed to know? Helen closed her eyes, as if the answer hurt too much to speak. Your mother wanted to tell you herself. She planned to. She just didn't get the chance. Those words hit me, like a cold wind across my chest. My mother? I whispered. You mean my biological mother? Helen nodded. Mom turned away. Her shoulders trembled. Where is she? I asked. Helen's expression shifted. Sadness, fear, anger, love, all passing through her face like shadows. She's gone, she whispered. She died the day after she left you. The breath left my body. It felt like the ground disappeared beneath me, like everything I had ever wondered suddenly turned into something sharp enough to cut me. Died? I repeated, my voice breaking. How? Why? Helen's voice cracked. She was very sick and very young. Too young. She didn't tell anyone how bad it was until it was too late. I shook my head slowly, unable to process any of it. Mom stepped forward, voice trembling. This is exactly why I didn't want this to happen today. You're not ready. I turned to her, hurt rising in my chest. Not ready? I said softly. When would I be ready? When I turned 30? 40? When you decided it didn't matter anymore? Mom wiped her eyes.
You were my daughter long before you could understand what happened. I didn't want you growing up with grief that didn't belong to you yet." Helen looked at her sharply. "Grief belongs to her," she whispered. "It has always belonged to her. She had a right to know the woman who gave her life." Mom turned away. Helen looked at me. The world tilted. My chest hurt in a way I couldn't describe. "What?" I breathed. Helen looked at me with eyes full of guilt. "When your mother got sick, she begged me to take you, to raise you, to make sure you grew up with family." "And you didn't?" I asked, my voice trembling. Helen shook her head, her face flushing with shame. "I wanted to. God, I wanted to so badly. But I wasn't stable then. I was younger than your mother. I was working 2 jobs, barely keeping myself alive." Her voice cracked. "I didn't have the money. I didn't have a home. I was drowning." She wiped her eyes. "I thought I had more time, that she'd get better, that I could help, and one day we'd raise you together." She let out a broken sigh. "But she didn't get better. And the day she died, I wasn't there. I didn't get to hold her hand. I didn't get to say goodbye." A tear rolled down her cheek. "And I didn't get to take you home." My lips parted, but I couldn't make words come out. Helen continued, "When your mother passed, a social worker needed to place you somewhere quickly. They contacted me. They asked if I could take you. And I told them—" Her voice failed. She swallowed hard. "I told them I wasn't ready." My heart twisted. She covered her face with her hands. "You were 10 days old." She sobbed quietly for several seconds before whispering, "That is the biggest regret of my life." Mom inhaled sharply, as if swallowing her own memories. Helen continued, "When your mother passed, a social worker needed to place you somewhere quickly. They contacted me. They asked if I could take you, and I told them—" Her voice failed. She swallowed hard. "I told them I wasn't ready." My heart twisted. She covered her face with her hands. "You were 10 days old." She sobbed quietly for several seconds before whispering, "That is the biggest regret of my life." Mom inhaled sharply, as if swallowing her own memories. Helen continued, "The social worker placed you with a foster family temporarily, but your adoptive mother, she came almost immediately." Mom looked up, her eyes red and shining. "She wasn't your adoptive mother at first," Helen said. "She was a volunteer. She saw you in the hospital nursery, and she held you, and she didn't let go." I looked at Mom. Her hands were trembling. "I fell in love with you. You were so small. You wouldn't stop crying until they put you in my arms." Helen nodded. "And when I returned, only a few days later, they told me you had already been placed for adoption." My breath caught. "You didn't even know I was gone," I whispered. Helen shook her head. "They had no way to contact me. I had just moved. My phone had been disconnected. When I finally tracked everything down—" She looked at Mom. "She already had you." Mom's voice wavered. "I wasn't trying to steal her place. I never meant to take anything from her." "But you did. You took everything. You took her daughter's last hope." Mom turned away, her shoulders shaking. "She wasn't stable," Mom said, voice breaking. "She couldn't take care of herself. And you were dying inside from losing your sister. You needed time to heal." Helen wiped her eyes angrily. "I needed my niece." Then she looked at me, a raw, broken look that I felt all the way in my bones. "I tried to get you back," she whispered. "I tried everything, but the adoption had already been finalized." My heartbeat thundered in my ears. "You tried?" I whispered. Helen nodded painfully. "They told me to leave you alone. They said interfering would only confuse you." She looked at Mom, and she promised me, that she would raise you with love and protect you from the pain of the past. Mom whispered, "I did." Helen shook her head sadly. "You protected her from me." Silence. Deep, heavy, suffocating.
The kind of silence that only happens when a truth too big to hold finally spills into the world. I wiped my face, my hands shaking. "So, all those years, you were watching?" I asked softly. Helen nodded slowly. "Every birthday, every first day of school, every holiday, every moment I could safely be close." Her eyes filled again. "Not to bother you, not to scare you, just to make sure you were alive, growing, breathing, okay." She looked at me with a trembling smile. "You have no idea how many nights I stood across that street just to watch you laugh in the living room, to see you blow out candles, to see you run into her arms when you fell down." She wiped her cheek. "It hurt. It hurt more than anything I've ever felt. But it was enough, because she loved you, and loving you from a distance was better than losing you completely." My chest burned. My voice finally cracked. "Why now? Why come to me now?" Helen looked down at her hands, then back at me, eyes full of something deep and final. "Because I'm running out of time," she said softly. My breath caught. "What do you mean?" She gave a small, heartbreaking smile. "The same sickness that took your mother, it's taking me too." The world stopped. Everything inside me went cold and hot at the same time. I stared at her, unable to breathe. Helen whispered, "I don't want to die without you knowing that I exist." She wiped her tears. "And I don't want to leave this world without you knowing that you were loved, long before she held you." I pressed a hand to my mouth, my voice shaking. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I didn't want to ruin your life," she whispered. "I just wanted one chance to tell you the truth before my time runs out." Mom closed her eyes, a tear falling silently down her cheek. "Helen!" she whispered. Helen didn't look at her. She looked only at me. And in the silence between us, I realized something. This wasn't just about the past. This was about the time she had left. This was about the last chance to understand where I came from. This was about a family broken long before I knew it existed. This was about a woman who had loved me quietly, from shadows and sidewalks and painful distances. This was about a truth I couldn't undo, and a story I wasn't ready for, but suddenly needed. Helen took a shaky breath. "Please," she said softly, "let me tell you everything." And for the first time since I met her, I didn't step back. I stepped closer. We sat in the living room, me on the edge of the couch, Helen in the old armchair near the window, and Mom standing by the doorway, like she needed something solid to lean her whole body against. No one spoke at first. The air felt heavy, like the house itself knew another secret was about to be dragged out into the light. Helen clasped her hands tightly, as if they were the only things keeping her from falling apart. Mom refused to look at her. And me? I felt like a child again, confused, small,
standing at the edge of a truth that was about to swallow me whole. Finally, Helen inhaled shakily. "There's something you need to know," she whispered. "Something about your mother. Something she didn't want to leave this world without you understanding." I swallowed hard. What happened to her?" I asked. Helen's eyes softened. "Your mother's name was Lily." My heartbeat stuttered. Lily. A name that I had never heard. A name that belonged to the woman whose face I did not know, whose voice I had never heard, whose arms had never held me. Helen continued. "She was gentle, brave, and far stronger than life ever gave her credit for." Her lips trembled. "And she loved you more than anything." My eyes burned. Mom looked away. "She didn't leave you because she didn't want you," Helen said softly. "She left you because she was dying." I closed my eyes, my chest aching. Helen's voice broke. "She was diagnosed very late. She kept ignoring symptoms. She kept telling me she was fine. She didn't want to go to the hospital because she was scared they would take you away if they realized how sick she was." A tear slipped down her cheek. "The day she finally collapsed, she begged me, 'Don't let them take my baby.'" I covered my mouth with my hand as a sob threatened to escape. Helen wiped her eyes. "She thought she would get better. She thought she had more time. She didn't want you to grow up in foster homes or with strangers, so she told the hospital staff only that you were with a family friend." She looked at Mom, who stood frozen, her face pale. "But she didn't expect to die so quickly." Helen's voice turned small. "She didn't expect her time to run out." Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. I whispered, "Was she alone when she died?" Helen shook her head. "No, I was there." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "The last thing she said was your name." My breath shattered. "She asked me to promise one thing." She said, "Don't let her forget me." A sob slipped from her lips, and I promised her, I swore I'd keep her memory alive, that you would grow up knowing who she was. She paused. "But I broke that promise." I shook my head quickly. "That wasn't your fault." "It was," she whispered. "It was my fault. I didn't take you immediately. My fault I let fear win. And by the time I was ready, you were already here, with her." She looked at Mom again. Mom's shoulders shook. I turned to her, voice trembling. "You knew my mother? You knew about Helen? About everything?" Mom nodded slowly, tears running down her face. "I knew." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because Lily asked me not to," she said softly. "She told the social worker if anything ever happened to her, you were to be given the chance to live a normal life without the weight of her sickness or the chaos of her past." Her voice cracked. "She didn't want you growing up feeling abandoned." I blinked through tears. "But I was abandoned." "No," Mom whispered. "You were protected. She loved you so much that she gave you a chance to grow up without watching her die." My throat tightened. "I'm sorry," Mom whispered again. "I thought I was doing what she wanted. I thought keeping the truth hidden was the only way to keep her last wish." Helen shook her head weakly. "That wasn't her last wish." Mom froze. Helen continued, her voice trembling. "She made you promise one thing, but she made me promise something else." My breath hitched. "What did she make you promise?" I asked. Helen looked at me, eyes full of guilt, grief, and something deeper. "She asked me to stay close, to watch you grow, to make sure you were safe, even if you never knew I existed." My heart cracked. "But that wasn't the hard part," Helen whispered. "The hard part was the second promise." Her hands trembled. "She made me promise that if anything ever happened to her, I would tell you the truth on your 21st birthday. A cold chill ran through my body. 21? I whispered. Helen nodded slowly. Yes, your 21st birthday is when she wanted you to know everything. Mom covered her face with her hands. She didn't want you to know as a child. She didn't want your teenage years ruined by grief you weren't ready to hold. My voice shook. So why didn't you tell me on my birthday? Helen closed her eyes. Because I lost my nerve. Because I was scared. Because I didn't know if you would hate me. Mom whispered bitterly. You broke her promise. Helen looked at her with exhausted eyes. So did you. The room went silent. It wasn't an angry silence. It was a silence made of 20 years of regret, 20 years of unspoken truth, 20 years of watching a child grow from across the street because both women believed they were protecting me. I didn't know where to put my grief, or my confusion, or my anger, or my love for two women who had both tried to do the right thing and ended up breaking each other instead. Finally, I whispered. What was she like? My mother. What was Lily like? Helen's face softened, her voice trembling. She was sunshine, even when she was sick, even when she was scared. She had this way of laughing that made everyone feel lighter. Mom nodded quietly, her voice faint. She was beautiful. She loved you more than I've ever seen. My voice shook. Why didn't she write me a letter? Say goodbye. Helen's expression changed, a flash of something pained and secretive. And she whispered, She did. My heart stopped. Mom's head snapped up. Helen continued, There is a letter she wrote the night before she died. My chest tightened. It's for you, Helen said softly. And I've kept it for 20 years. Mom whispered, her voice breaking. You promised you wouldn't. Helen shook her head. I promised Lily I would give it to her when she turned 21. She looked at me. And it's time. My hands trembled. Where is it? I whispered. Helen reached into her small cloth bag, the same one she always carried when she watched from across the street. She pulled out an old, faded envelope. My name was written on it in soft, shaky handwriting. My breath caught. The room fell away. The years fell away. Everything narrowed to that envelope. Helen held it out to me with trembling fingers. This, she whispered, is everything she never got to say.
For a long time after Helen handed me the envelope, I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even blink. It felt like the whole world had shrunk to the size of a thin piece of paper that had survived decades without me. Decades of dust, of time, of silence, of stories that had been kept away from me like fragile glass hidden on a high shelf. My name was written on the front, in handwriting that wasn't mine, in handwriting I had never seen. But somehow it felt familiar, like a part of me recognized it, even though my mind didn't. Mom stayed frozen by the doorway, her hand pressed to her chest as if she was trying to hold her heart in place. Helen waited quietly, her hands clasped together like someone praying. I stared at the envelope. My fingers trembled. My throat burned. I don't know if I can read it, I whispered. Helen's voice came gently. You don't have to. Not right away. It's yours, whenever you're ready. But I shook my head.
No, I've been waiting my whole life for this, even if I didn't know it. My hands shook as I slid my thumb under the flap. The paper tore softly, a sound that felt like it echoed through the entire room. Inside was a single sheet of worn paper, folded carefully, lovingly. I unfolded it slowly, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear my own breath. At the top of the page was her handwriting, her real handwriting, my mother's handwriting. Something inside me cracked open. The letter began, "My darling girl." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I blinked them away and kept reading. If you are reading this, it means I couldn't stay long enough to tell you everything myself. And I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for every moment I couldn't be there. I'm sorry for every birthday I will miss. I'm sorry for every night you will fall asleep without me. My breath shook. Helen covered her mouth, tears falling silently. Mom stood still, her eyes closed tightly. I kept reading. I want you to know something first. You were not unwanted. You were not abandoned. You were not giving up. My chest ached like something sharp had settled inside it. You were loved. From the moment I knew I was carrying you, I loved you with every part of me that was still alive. A sob escaped my throat. But life was cruel to me, sweetheart. Cruel in a way I never wanted it to be for you. When I found out I was sick, I begged God for more time. Just a little. Enough to see you grow. Enough to hold your hand while you learned to walk. Enough to hear you say my name. I pressed a hand to my mouth as tears streamed down my face. But I knew, even before anyone told me, that I wouldn't get that time. Mom turned away, her shoulders shaking. I wiped my face and kept reading. So I had to make a choice no mother should ever have to make. I had to choose between letting you stay with me and letting you have a life. A quiet cry escaped Helen. I chose your life. The room went silent except for our breathing. I didn't leave you because I didn't want you. I left you because I loved you too much to let you watch me die. My vision blurred again. I want you to grow up smiling, laughing, running, learning, loving, not sitting beside a hospital bed holding the hand of a mother who cannot stay. Please forgive me. One day, please forgive me. Helen sobbed softly into her hands. Mom finally turned around, her face red and wet. I kept reading through tears. Your Aunt Helen? She is brave, and she loves you. But she was hurting too. I knew she needed time to heal, and I didn't want you to grow up carrying the weight of two broken women. Helen shook her head desperately. No, Lily, no, she whispered to herself, but I kept reading. That is why I left you with a promise that one day you would learn the truth. Not when you were too young to understand, not when you were too vulnerable to hold it, but when you were strong enough to decide what it meant to you. I swallowed thickly. Today is that day, your 21st birthday. I let out a shaking breath. A date, a number, a milestone I used to think meant nothing. Now, it meant everything. I know your life will be full without me. I know you will grow into someone kind, brave, beautiful. But I want to leave you with one last truth. My hands tightened around the paper. You are not a mistake. You are not a burden. You are not a shadow of my life. I cried harder. You are my greatest love, my brightest moment, my miracle. The words blurred. My voice cracked. I kept reading. And if you ever wonder who you are, look in the mirror. you will see me. My eyes, my smile, my soul. Helen sobbed loudly now. Mom wiped her face over and over, even though tears kept coming. I will watch over you for as long as I can. After that, I hope my memory warms you instead of hurting you. My hand trembled on the page. Be happy, my sweet girl, for both of us. The last line hit me like a final heartbeat. With all my love, Mom. When I finished the letter, I couldn't speak. Not a word. I pressed the paper to my chest and sobbed quietly, the kind of sob that shakes your whole body from the inside. Mom came forward slowly, as if asking permission to cross a line she had stayed behind for years. She sat beside me and put her hand on my back. I'm sorry, she whispered. I tried to protect you. I thought keeping the pain away was the right thing. I leaned into her, crying harder. Helen knelt in front of us both, her hands trembling as she took mine. She loved you, Helen said softly. She loved you so deeply that even dying couldn't stop her from trying to give you a future. We stayed like that for a long time. 3 women, bound by pain and love and a truth that had taken decades to surface. When I finally lifted my head, my voice was quiet. What do I do now? Helen wiped her tears. You live, she whispered. You let her words guide you, not her absence. Mom nodded through her tears. And you let us be part of your life. Both of us. If you want that. I looked at them. One woman who raised me, one woman who loved me from a distance, and one woman's words were written on the paper, still warm against my chest. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel incomplete. I didn't feel lost. I didn't feel like a question waiting for an answer. I felt whole. Broken in places, yes, but whole. I took a shaky breath. I want both of you. I want my family. Helen broke down again. Mom leaned her head against mine, and between the tears, the grief, the joy, the healing, I realized something I had never understood before. My story didn't begin when I was born. It didn't begin when I was adopted. It didn't begin when Helen showed up on the sidewalk. It began long before that, with a woman named Lily, who loved me so much, she gave me the world, even when she couldn't stay in it. And finally, after 21 years, I felt her love. I felt all of it, as if she were holding me from somewhere I couldn't see.